And Ashley will be right back. She just stepped out to go check on something. We are going to go through each school, one question at a time. Hold on. I know. How we're going to do that is we're going to have everybody mute their screen unless it's your turn to ask a question. Otherwise, there's too much feedback. We have 3 schools. We have Woodview, we have KLH, and we have RCH. We're going to go in ABC order, so we'll go KLH, RCH, Woodview. So if everyone except RCH could mute their screen.
Except RCH?
Except RCH, because you're first.
You say KLH.
Oh, no, I can't do the alphabet. KLH would be first. And then KLH, feel free to ask your first question.
Our first question, do we have any other than any questions that we have? If we're doing a multiplication chart accommodation.
Are they allowed? One's on the IEP, they can use it.
Can they use a multiplication chart if it's on the IEP during the PARCC test?
Yes. They, Michael clarified with ISB it needs to be on their IEP and it would be used in the same capacity a calculator would be utilized. So we cannot, so when it comes to the accommodations, we can make the supports available to them, but we cannot prompt the student to use them. So we would have to keep the multiplication charts near them in their workspace or their field, but we couldn't say, oh, this is a multiplication problem, please use this chart.
Got it. And just so you know, on the other side of me is all of our small group administrators. You can't see them, but we have you projected on a screen. So that's why I'm looking behind you guys, just to make sure that I'm covering everything that we need. As far as makeups, I'm very anxious.
So we have 3 schools on the line. So we're going to go 1 question per school just to keep things fair. So we're going to go to the next one. So KLH then goes to RCH.
All right. Our question, Michael, we had asked about how do the tech proctors end a session, because we didn't get to that point for, I mean, Darla, if you want to expand. So for the small group test proctors, how would they end an entire PARCC session?
Right, so I'm going to send out the, it's about 6 pages long with pictures, so it's large writing with pictures. Step by step of what you do and all the scenarios to end testing. So that will cover that, and I'll send that out tomorrow, so everybody has that. I believe it's also mentioned on the YouTube link that we took from Brian Seymour. If you viewed all the YouTube links, the last one he does is, I know he speaks to it a little bit, but we will send you the PDF documentation tomorrow, step by step on what to do.
Okay, thank you.
Woodview.
All right. One of the questions that I submitted was,
I'm sorry, you can hear the, but we can hear your question.
All right. Okay, sorry. The question is about breaks. You had a question about individual breaks. How are we going to?
Sorry, Tiffany, we can't hear you.
We've had this happen already with other schools. Tiffany, if you could email us your question.
No, let's do it. Never call my cell. Tiffany, can you call my cell phone and I'll do you here through the speakerphone on my phone so we all can hear you? I'll give you my number now. Do you have a number to, you have a phone to call me with?
Erica, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Put it in the chat.
Oh.
So ask Mike Phillips to hover over the screen and get the chat open on the left, the upper left corner. It's on the chat.
Yep, we're opening the chat.
Oh, okay.
So in the Hangout, in the chat.
Yep, we see you. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks for your good question.
How breaks work.
Sorry. So the way this is going to work for Woodview is everyone to type their questions on the screen, and I can't see it from here, so my face is going to state it for everyone to hear.
The question is, how do breaks work?
So how do breaks work? Do you mean an accommodation for IEP students that get a break in testing?
Or do you mean breaks for the proctor?
He says yes. To the first one, I'm guessing.
Okay. So there's a kind of standard way breaks work for all assessments. It's about a 10-minute break in time for kids to stretch their legs. If they are to leave the environment, they have to be with a teacher. All right. From Woodview, we go back to KLH.
The break should be scheduled, question mark.
Yeah. If you have a student who has a break, they should be scheduled. If, for instance, the student says they need a break either social emotionally or they have to use the washroom or it's an emergency and they need that break, then you're going to want to have a system in your building where other students cannot be left alone. This applies to both your large group testing sessions and your small group testing session. So if there is a tech proctor, they can't be left alone with other students, and we certainly can't have a small group test proctor leaving the session to give a student a break while other students are still testing. So your building should work a communication plan, whether it's calling down to the office, having a paraprofessional in the session as well, or being able to send an email to the office staff indicating that a student needs to take a break. The student would be allowed to leave the testing environment, but they should be in eyesight of a staff member at all times. Also, leaving the test environment does not pause the test. The test still continues, and that break is factored into the test session.
Except for in this case, it's probably students that have extended time as well.
Right. So they would have the extended time, but it's not like it. Remember, all test sessions need to end by the end of the day. So if they take a 10-minute break, it doesn't mean that they get 10 minutes at the end of the day to finish that assessment.
Correct. Correct. Okay. Great question. KLH?
Was there anything else you guys wanted to ask? As far as the makeups, Mike, if we are worried about the number and trying to honor the requirements of the state, how are we supposed to do that?
Okay, so I'm going to be sending out directions on how to do makeup testing, and there'll be two ways of handling it. Most of it is requiring a collaboration and communication between your building school test administrator, test coordinator, and the PARCC specialist we're hiring. I'm asking the PARCC specialists to be the ones to create and set up the test sessions for makeup testing, but they'll need to know for certain who is being given a makeup test. So there's that part of it. That's a communication issue between you, yourself, Christina, and those individuals to make sure all kids are assessed. But then there's also a document that's out there that I spoke to Isby on today that will allow us to group kids together for makeup testing that may not be in the same grade. And I'll be sharing that out. I got clarification from Isby last night, and we can do this for makeup testing. So I'll provide that out to the schools as well.
Okay, thank you. That's our last question.
That's a great question.
Thank you.
RC Hill.
All right, here we are. So the tech proctors, when they come to our building, will they be responsible for all those rosters? They'll have all that with them, as well as like things to record absent students down on? Or do we create the absent student lists or the absent student sheets?
So it's going to be both. So next week, when they're here for their 3 days of training, my plan is to be able to provide them with the version of the report that is given to whoever's administering the test. So who's coming to that test session. There's a second report to be given to classroom teachers, which states, here are my children and here's their test session. So that one you would print out and give to your teachers. The one for the tech specialists, we will print out next week. However, as changes occur, as you have issues in your school where kids are, in certain schools where kids are changing classes or exiting your school and going to another, or exiting test sessions and going into another, you would need to reprint those reports to give to people so they know who's supposed to be where.
Okay.
Next up is Woodview, which would need to be typed.
Hold, please.
Woodview is typing in their question now, so just one moment, please.
Maybe come back to us.
All
so
right,
if Woodview just types in while the next person's asking the question, we can get back to
Woodview is going to continue typing for a moment. Why don't we go to KLH?
I'm sorry, we were talking to our tech person. I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
So while we're waiting for Woodview to type in the question, Christina, do you or your team have any questions?
Let me just check with our small group. Ladies, forever now or hold your peace. Promise?
Well, I just wanted a clarification about a kid. I have actually 2 students when we're doing a small group test, bathroom emergency. It doesn't matter.
2 students doing a small group test, issues with having to use the restroom immediately. What is the protocol?
You're going to want to have a system within your building where you can notify somebody to dispatch to that small group room immediately, and then that staff member would escort the student to the washroom. That student's test would remain open.
But my understanding is that only the person that's in that classroom or in that proctoring those students is allowed to accompany them to the restroom.
Right, well, we're going to have to go with what's feasible. And if you have a situation where that's not the only child in the room and there's no one else there, we're not going to march the entire group down to the bathroom while 1 or 2 people go to the bathroom and have the rest stand in the hallway. Instead,
that sounds crazy. That's what was indicated in the manual. So just want to make sure.
So we're going to just have to apply some common sense to it, and the solution will be to call for assistance, to have someone escort them to the bathroom, and then have them come back.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anything else?
If you want to take a moment, because I know we have a whole bunch of small group proctors with us, so I just want to, from the bottom of my heart, thank all of you for proctoring these.
Let's see them.
Hi, guys. Thank you. We appreciate it.
There goes Pop. All right. As I spill the pop everywhere. Okay.
We do have a Woodview question.
Okay, we have a Woodview question. Let's hear that one.
All right, Woodview.
So Woodview's question says, are adults allowed to prompt with statements like keep working and try your best, encouraging statements?
So, I mean, your point is you can't. So we can't prompt them to say, it looks like you're struggling, you should use X. You can't do that.
I think we definitely want to keep the students motivated, but we also don't want to be in a situation where it could be looked at like, so I'm just going to take, for instance, the keep trying. It could be that the student's head's down and they're frustrated. And so we might say keep trying, and that's to keep them engaged in the assessment. And I don't know if I see a concern with that. But let's say we see a student who's hovering over 4 choices and we go, keep trying, do your best. That may cue the student to think, oh, maybe B is not the right choice, maybe the answer is C. So we should really use our professional judgment to make sure that any prompts we give may not be construed as helping the student through the assessment. So let's even take the question of accommodations. If a student has text-to-speech, where the computer would read to them, but the student does not use that support, we cannot prompt the student and say, remember, use your text-to-speech support if you're having a hard time reading. The student's going to have to self-initiate access to those supports.
I think that's well said. Excellent. That was Woodview. So going back to KLH. RC Hill, sorry, they're the link here. RC Hill's turn.
All right. I think our last question is in regards to our scribe that we have. I recently just, I just shared with the person who will be scribing for one student. Who can she ask if she has questions that I cannot answer? Would it be Erica?
It depends on what the questions are. If the questions are technology based, then we're going to want to connect her with the tech proctor or the tech specialist within your building. If it's how do I read this statement, how do I record this information, it's more about the completion of serving as the proctor so that we're adequately supporting the students. By all means, they are welcome to call us. I would also connect her to your student service administrator when she's in the building prior to PARCC. And understand if questions come up on the day of the assessment, we will have a phone number where you can call to ask those questions. So if you call the Ad Center and press extension 244, Barb LaFosse or somebody from our department will be there to get your question and connect you with staff. So if you have a bilingual question, we will help connect you with the bilingual department. If you've got a question for technology, we'll help connect you to the technology. Or if it's a question of how do I do this accommodation for this student, we have taken SSAs, have all scheduled a time to take office hours throughout PARCC testing, so we will have staff available who can answer your question there as well.
The tech doctors also will have a phone number if they have a technical question that they're not able to answer. We have kind of a tech command center set up here, so we'll be able to respond to them with some support there as needed.
Okay.
So please reach out to us and we'll find that answer out for you.
Thank you.
All right, Woodview, does Woodview have another question?
Yeah. How are staff who go between buildings getting a login and account? Will the first building they go to set it up, or will it be the same login working for both buildings?
All right, so I know the solution to this, but I wasn't aware this was out there. So we have staff that will be testing as test administrators in 2 different buildings. Send me their names, and I'll make sure they have access to both buildings.
We have a question at KLH.
Yes, please, go ahead.
Hearing itinerants, can we pull them to Proctor?
Yes.
If they're the only service that's provided.
We need to work with our hearing itinerants because they often travel, and so if a student has an extended test time on their accommodations, the hearing itinerant may not be able to provide that support, because if they're supposed to be in your building one day for maybe an hour, but then they're scheduled to be in another building for another hour, they would not be able to deliver services. However, I encourage you to reach out to your hearing itinerant to see if they are able to be a proctor on that day and that time, and they've received the training. So you'll have to make sure that they were looped into the small group test proctor training. If it does not work within their schedule because they are traveling between multiple buildings and their caseloads are often scattered between 5 to 6 different buildings, we should use staff within the building to help support the student by being the small group test proctor.
Okay.
Thank you.
RC Hill, do you have any other questions?
It's a pleasure to meet you guys.
Not right now.
Woodview, do you have any others?
Nope.
Great. All right, then really briefly, I'm going to speak to one issue, well, 2 things. One, we are going to compile all the questions from all the sessions with answers and send that out to all schools so that you're aware of any other issues that you might not have thought of. So that will be going out at some point next week. We will not have that by tomorrow, but that'll be sometime next week. Also, there is an issue with how to deal with students who refuse to test. There are a lot of parents asking if there's an opt-out letter, and as we stated before, there is no opt-out letter. In Illinois, it is mandatory that all students are assessed. And as educators, as a district, and as professionals, we are licensed by the school board and bound by school code to administer the test. Administering the test simply means that we present the assessment to every child. If a child then refuses to test, they become known as a code 15, and this is a code parents now have and are asking a lot about. Code 15 is information that we put into a file sent to ISB stating this child did not test because they refused to test. That's what it means. So we will be providing a written policy to you today that states if a child refuses to test, they are to read silently at their desk for the remainder of the test session, that they will have to do that each time they are brought to the lab to be assessed. So for ELA, and there's 3 units, they'll have to refuse Unit 1, Unit 2, Unit 3. Each time they do, we have to record them as a code 15 on a form I'm going to give you, and then the child is instructed to just read silently at their desk. We cannot, in ISB's words, force, coerce, or compel children to take the exam, but we must present them with the exam. So you'll be receiving more on that later today. Any other closing comments?
I thought I saw some typing, so I just want to make sure there was no follow-up questions to that.
It says, oh wait, never mind.
Okay, so Astrid?
No, thank you all for your support.
So thank you for your time, everybody, and unless you have any other questions, then we are through with this session for the day.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
All right, have a great day.
Thank you, you too.